Hey guys, Miss Rogers here. Today we're going to work on rounding, so we're going to do a review with rounding. Now, rounding is looking at a specific number and trying to make it into like a simpler form or an easier way to look at that number. But you need to keep that number as close as to the original number as possible. So rounding can be tricky for a lot of students, but with more practice and the more knowledge you gain on how to round and what rounding is, the easier rounding becomes. Rounding is important because in math class we see a lot of numbers where we can't easily count to. And as fourth graders, we deal a lot with numbers in the thousands. So rounding certain numbers to the nearest thousand or to like the nearest tenth or whatever place value you're rounding to makes that number a little easier for us to work on. So let's get started with rounding. So I've put up on my board already a couple rules we need to focus on for rounding. Okay, I'm going to get to those in a second, but I want to do our little rounding hill. This is what I used when I have to round. Okay, so I'm going to put it up here and then I will explain it in a second. Okay, so if you notice on my rounding hill, all it is, I just drew a little curved line and I put my numbers 1 to 9 on there. Okay, so if you look on my rounding hill, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I go over to 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I have a star over the 5 because 5 is that number that you focus on that will tell you if you need to round up or round down. So numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, when you get a place value and you got to look at it and you have numbers 1 to 4, you're going to round down. So if I was to give you the number 432 and I want you to round it to the nearest hundred, okay, I'm looking at this 4, but I'm going to look next door and see it's a 3. Oh, my 3 falls on my round down category. So that number would be rounded down to 400. You all see how I had 3, my tens place that I was looking at because I was rounding to the hundredths place, and 3 falls on my round down category. All right, so when you get to the number 5, that is when you round up, okay? So numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, you round up. That's why my arrow's going up and not down, okay? So if I was to give you the number 578, and I want you to round it to the hundredths place. I'm looking at the 5, but I'm going to look next door to see what number it is. Oh, it's a 7. It falls into my round up category. So that number would round up to 600. Okay? Now, let's look at a couple more examples so you can get more familiarized with this. Okay, so let's look at our rules. Okay? Kind of just talked about it in our learning curve. I'm bringing my little rounding hill back up. Okay, so number 1, what you're going to do, you're going to underline the place value that you're rounding to. So in your number, when it tells you to round to the nearest hundredths, you're going to underline the number that's in the hundredths place value. I will show you an example in a second. Okay, number 2, you're going to look next door. This is to the right. So the number that's underlined, you're going to look next door to the number that's to the right to see if you need to round up or round down. And numbers 1 to 4, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, all get rounded down. Numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9 get rounded up. So let's look at an example. So if I give you the example, 4,352. Okay? This number is just to the thousandths because we have ones, 1, tens, hundredths, thousands. Okay, so if I tell you to round to the nearest thousandth, okay, I'm going to bring my number down here so I can work with it easier. Okay. Alright, so our first rule when we round, we underline the place value that we're rounding to. So if I tell you I want to round to the nearest thousandths, I'm going to underline the 4 because that's what I'm rounding to. Okay? Then I'm going to look next door. It's a 3. I know 3 falls into the rounding down category. So I'm going to keep my 4 right here because that's what I'm sticking with because that's what I'm rounding to, and everything after the 4 will be 0 since I'm rounding down. Well, yes. Okay, so 4,352 when you round it to the nearest thousand is 400 because you had to look at the 4 and look next door and it's a 3. And on our rounding hill, let me draw the hill again. Okay, and on the hill, 3 falls on the rounding down category. Okay, so if you look at the number again, okay, 4,352, and say I want you to round it to the nearest hundredth. Let's go down here. Okay, so I'm going to bring my number down again so I can work with it. Okay, I'm going to underline the hundredths place value, so I have ones, tens, hundreds, so I'm looking at the 3 this time, but I'm going to look next door. It's a 5, so if I go over here to my rounding hill, okay, my rounding hill, my 5 falls under my round up because 5 is the number you look at when you round up. So I'm going to round up. So now I'm going to keep my 4 and my thousandths place value because that's going to stay the same. But now this 3 is going to change because that 5 is making a change. So that 3 is going to go up, and 1 more than 3 is 4. But everything after that 3 is going to be zeros because that's everything after it is zeros because it doesn't matter because we're rounding. And when we round, we go to like the nearest of a number. So all those will have zeros. All right. So if I use that same problem, I tell you to round to the nearest 10. Okay. I'm going to put my number down here again. Okay, so now I look at my tens place value, which is 5, because 1's tens. Okay, then I'm going to look next door, all right, and I see 2. 2 falls under my round down category, so that 2 is going to make that 5 to stay at the 5. It's going to go down, okay, so it's just going to stay where it is. So I'm going to keep my 4 the same, keep my 3 the same, keep my 5 because I'm not rounding up, I'm just staying where I'm at, and that 2 will be a 0. Okay, now let's look at a problem in the 4th grade world. Okay, because we deal with numbers in the thousandths, but a lot with the hundredths, thousandths. So if I give you the number 351,267, okay, I want to look at the thousandths. Let's do 10 thousandths, since we didn't do that one yet. Okay, so I'm going to bring my number down. Okay, now 10 thousandths. I have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000. So I'm looking at this 5 right here. I'm going to look next door to know what I'm doing. 1 falls under my round down category, so this number is just going to stay at the ones in the thousandths place value. So I'm going to keep my 3 the same, keep my 5 the same because 1 is rounding down, or I messed that up earlier. So I'm going to keep my 5 the same because 1 rounds down, so the 5 will stay the same. Okay? And then everything after that will be zeros. Okay? So I looked at my 10,000ths place value, that 1 rounds down, so the 5 stays the same. If I tell you to look at the hundredths thousands, okay, this time I'm going to look at ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, hundreds, thousands. So I'm looking at my 3. I need to look next door. It's a 5. 5 is that key number that you need to remember because when you get to 5, you round up. So that means my 3 is going to become a 4 because if I'm rounding up, I'm going 1 more than 3. And 1 more than 3 is 4. So I'm going to bring my 4 over, and everything after my number that's underlined is all zeros. Okay? So 351,267 rounded to the nearest 100,000 is 4,000. Okay? All right. Let's do another number. Do one more example. All right. If I give you the number, let's do 678,321. All right. And I tell you to round to the nearest 1,000. In this number, I'm going to look at my 8 because my 8 is in my thousands place value because I have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Going to look next door. 3 is in my category that I have to round down. So 8 is going to stay the same because I'm not rounding up. So I'm going to keep my 6 the same, my 7 the same. Keep my 8 because that's the number that I'm rounding to. And everything after my number that's underlined is all zeros. Because when you round, you use zeros to make it easier for you. Now, if I tell you to look at your hundreds, thousands, okay, so now we're going to look at our 6 because we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, hundreds, thousand. Okay, and I'm going to look next door. 7 is in my category to round up. So that 7 makes this 6 go to a 7. Okay, because 1 more than 6 is 7. So I'm going to put my 7 over here, and everything after my underlined number all becomes zeros. Okay, so it's going to become 700,000. All right. So when you round, all you have to look at is the number and the place value that you're rounding to and the number next door. Okay. And if your number next door is numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to round the number that's underlined down. So that means you're going to keep the number the same. Okay. If your number that's next door is 5, 6, 7, or 8, the number that is underlined, you're going to round it up. So you're going to go to the number that's next to it. So if that number underlined gets rounded up 1 and it's an 8, it becomes 9. Okay, so you're just going to go 1 more than that number. Rounding isn't that difficult if you know the steps to rounding and when to round. If you know if your numbers are 1, 2, 3, or 4, you round down. Numbers 5, 6, 7, or 8, and 9, you round up, okay? So if it helps you to draw the little rounding hill, that's what I call it. Some people call it the rounding coaster. Either way is fine. If it helps you to draw that out to help you, do that. Whatever makes you comfortable and whatever can get you the right answer. I hope this video helped you guys today. Until next time, have a good day.